Everybody from Tulane University. It's Mallory Caterine. Really excited to introduce you to the comment session for I Know What Boys Want, or Girls, Boys, we'll see. So tonight I'll be your MC. Kenny Morrell of Rhodes College will be our chat room moderator, and Norman Sandridge is going to be dealing with the Google Hangout. So to begin, I want to talk a little bit about what I was thinking about making this module and what it's done for me. And then we'll go into the program of what we're doing today, and then we'll send it on its way. So one goal that I had when I was making this module and exploring it from all the different perspectives tonight is to open an ongoing discussion in this course about how gender presentation and gender expectations factored into the ways ancient Greeks and Romans led and the ways they evaluated their leaders. So this is a thread I want to have continue throughout this whole course for everyone, something that's kind of in the background as we look at everything else. So the other goal I had was to translate this conversation into the present and to open our eyes to, or to change our view of how gender and leadership are interconnected now. So when I first started working seriously on this topic about a year and a half ago, I could have never guessed just how much food for thought I would have with the current election cycle and everything that's been going on, to the point that we may not even be able to dip a toe into what's going on in the election because it's so much. Once you dip a toe in, you have to dive. But I hope everyone will be talking about that on the Slack chat. And I'd be lying if I said that my own research into gender and leadership in antiquity hasn't shaped my views of the current political scene, or vice versa. But ultimately, I think that's a great payoff of this new humanistic leadership studies discipline we're trying to develop here, where a deep critical knowledge of the human past can inform and help to create the human future. So Plutarch's Life of Antony jumped out to me as a great text for us to start exploring this topic, because from the very beginning, gender roles and leadership qualities are at the forefront of how Plutarch constructs and characterizes Antony. That very first anecdote about Antony's parents, with his overly generous father and his controlling, sneaky wife, hopefully reminded everyone about the myth of Zeus and Hera from Iliad 19 that we just looked at last week. That similarity between these two texts from such a long time apart should give us a sense of how old and deep the stereotype of the sneaky wife is. Along with the idea that even the best men can be undercut by a tricky woman. But at the same time, if you look at it from a different angle, Julia could be seen to be saving Antonius from his own worst qualities. And this is another way we can think about the female characters that we have in the Antony II. So I want you to keep that split perspective in mind. The text, of course, as everyone saw this week, I hope, it's a lot more complicated as it goes on. Antony is a man's man in two senses. This is something we talked about in my class. And in the beginning, he's a prostitute for other men, but he's also a super virile soldier and general who all of his men think the best of. He embraces Eastern luxury, but he also shows himself to be one of the most hardened Romans in campaign. He's governed by emotion and whim, but at the same time is really frank and straightforward and kind of guileless in a lot of ways. And he models himself after Hercules, and other people compare him to Dionysus, both of these figures who have hyper-masculine and hyper-feminine qualities and stories attached to them. The female characters of the narrative are leaders in their own right, and that's what makes this really interesting to me. And Plutarch spends a lot of time fleshing out their characters, evaluating them as their own people and as their influences on Antony. And that's what my students will be showing to you in a most dramatic fashion today. how these women balance their influence and power with what's expected of them as women is a really big theme, and something that I think strikes a chord with us now all the time. And then Cleopatra, her identity as a powerful woman is further complicated by the fact that she's a non-Roman. What she does and what happens to her is a really great study in intersectional feminism too, if we think about factors beyond just gender. So, before I turn things over to all of our other participants, I want to invite everyone to participate in the poll that hopefully Kenny has posted in the Slack channel about whether Antony or Cleopatra was the better leader, which this could be a real choice between the lesser of two evils, something that I think a lot of people feel that they need to be doing soon. So I want to invite everyone else to chime in during the session, or everyone, not everyone else, about the top 3 issues or questions that came up in your classes or in your tutorials or in your own reading for people who are doing this course on their own as you did this module. For us in our class at Tulane, the 3 biggest things I think that we talked about again and again were the Roman perception of the East as being a place of effeminate softness. We also spent a lot of time trying to figure out what makes Fulvia and Cleopatra different as different kinds of bad women. And also we looked a lot at both the cons and the pros of Antony's over-emotionality. He is someone who's very attuned to other people's emotions, even as he lets his own get out of control. So I'd love to hear what other people got out of this module. Okay, so tonight we have the following segments. Lindsay Samson from Georgia Tech is going to share her expertise about Arsinoe II, a real hashtag boss bitch, and discuss Cleopatra's leadership and how it fits within the long tradition of Ptolemaic queens. We'll then come back here to Tulane for a really awesome role play segment that I know I'm excited about. So we will have a Plutarch stand-in who's going to interview Fulvia, Octavia, and Cleopatra on why they think Antony ultimately failed as a leader and to defend their own roles in his career. There'll be a survey that you can fill out at that point too. Following that, we will go to London to talk to Vicky Gyori about some numismatics of this period and look at the rivalry in iconography between Antony and Cleopatra and Octavian. Following that, we will go to Hobart and William Smith Colleges in upstate New York, lovely upstate New York. And a couple of Jim Capri's students are going to talk to us about the coordinate college system that they have there. It's kind of a unique institutional structure, and how gender and leadership works in that institution. And then we'll wrap it all up by looking at our polls, looking at our top 3s, and coming back to any last-minute questions that we have. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lindsay Samson, who I hope is here and ready to go.
Hey, I'm ready. Okay, so I want to preface this with I'm sort of my interest in Arsinoe II is I don't know that I call it expertise, but she is sort of a hobby of mine. I like to collect little tidbits on her because I find her fascinating. So I thought that I would take you all through a brief survey of her life, and we could sort of pick up where you can make comparisons with Cleopatra. And if there's anything on the chat, please feel free to interrupt me. Okay, let me do my screen share. 1 second. I don't know if it's gonna. It's not gonna let me do my screen share, is it? Because I'm not driving. Is that right?
It should work. I think if you just yeah, it should be in the left-hand side there.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's different when I'm driving. There we go. Okay. Okay. Can you see it? Is it up? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so this, for those of you who may be familiar with it, those of you who aren't, this is Tiki Talkie Timeline, which I love for any of my history classes. It's a great timeline, and you can put some interesting things in there. So in about and all of the dates on here are January, just because we don't have specific months. So we have years, and sometimes not even specific years. So Arsinoe, before she's known as Arsinoe II, is the daughter of Ptolemy I. Ptolemy I was one of Alexander's generals, and when his empire was divided up, Ptolemy got Egypt as his main prize. So her father is that Ptolemy. Her mother is Berenike. Her brother is Ptolemy II, her full brother. Her full sister is Philoterra, and she has a half-brother who's called Ptolemy Carounus, which means Ptolemy the lightning bolt. He had a bit of a hot temper. So that's her family situation. She stays at home or in Memphis and Alexandria, but a lot of the time in Memphis. She would have been, we think she was probably well educated, maybe not as well educated as Cleopatra, but for a woman during that time, there's her tutor, her brother's tutor, Strato. She has correspondence with him, so we think that she probably was tutored by him as well. Okay, so we're going to skip forward 18 years when she marries Lysimachus, who is in Thrace and eventually in Macedonia. She's 18 years old. He has children by a previous wife. He's much older than she is. She gives him 3 sons, called Ptolemaic, Lysimachus, and Philip. Okay. All right, so back in Egypt, so she's off in Thrace. Back in Egypt, her brother, Ptolemy II, is made co-regent with Ptolemy I, his father. This is a problem because Ptolemy Carounus is actually older than Ptolemy II, but his mother is not the favored wife at the time, so he gets passed over in favor of Ptolemy II. So Ptolemy Carounus, fearing for his life, flees Egypt, thinking that his younger brother will see him as a threat to his succession and have him killed. Okay, so he is with Seleucus in I think it's Turkey. Okay. So also, Agathocles was Lysimachus's heir apparent, right? And Arsinoe is thought to have played. So Lysimachus designates him as the heir, and then sorry, I'm going to see if I can mute that at all. But Lysimachus works with him, but the idea is that, sorry, the beeping is distracting me. Okay. The idea is that Arsinoe sort of, Agathocles is not one of her sons with Lysimachus. She wants to promote her sons as the heir apparent. So she's kind of, the image is that she's sort of whispering in Lysimachus's ear and saying, hey, I think he's probably conspiring against you. Let's just go ahead and get rid of him. Okay. So he is imprisoned, and his father, Lysimachus, ends up executing him. So Lysimachus is old at this point, and there's his heir apparent he's already done away with. So the next one in line would have been Ptolemy, Arsinoe's son, by him. So she is also, much like Cleopatra, portrayed as being ruthless, as manipulating men in power to get what she wants, and ultimately, I mean, much like Cleopatra, especially later, to protect her own children, she's, sort of seduces these men and gets them to do what it is she needs them to do for her own protection. Okay. So after Agacles dies. Oh, I skipped one. Okay, sorry. Lysimachus dies, and there's no clear heir apparent. So he dies in battle, and what's interesting is that he brings Arsinoe with him to fight the war in Ephesus. And so which is, let me click on this and make it bigger. Ephesus is here, okay, with the Seleucid king in the Seleucid kingdom right outside. And she barely makes it out. There's a story that she, like Antony, dresses up as a maid and then sends a decoy out. Her decoy is actually killed, and she makes it out alive somehow with her and her sons. It's not clear exactly where they are, which is also interesting that he didn't take them on campaign. So she makes it out alive to Ephesus and goes back to Cassandria in Macedonia and sort of actually hires mercenaries and takes over that city. It sort of becomes hers, which is unheard of at this point, that a woman can hold a city like that. I mean, she has her sons, but they are not the ones ruling. Okay, so there we go. So Lysimachus dies, she leaves, and Ptolemy Carounus, her half-brother, also makes it back to Macedonia, and he is proclaimed king by the Macedonian army, and he goes and he's knocking on the door at Cassandria saying, hey, let's work this out. And she says, she holds off for a long time, which is actually the judgment that she probably should have listened to, but she can't really deny him. I mean, he's at the gate with an army saying, let me in, and she's saying, I don't think so. I'm worried you're going to kill my sons because they would be a threat to your kingship. So he makes an oath to the gods saying, I promise that I will only have you as my wife, because they decide that, that they will solidify their union, their political union, with marriage. So he says, I will only have you as my wife, and I will take your sons as my heirs, and I will not, come after them or see them as a threat because they'll be my heirs. And so finally she gives in and she agrees. Well, he kills 2 of her sons, and the oldest one, Ptolemy, and herself manage to escape. She spends some time in Samothrace and goes from there, eventually ends up in Egypt with her full brother Ptolemy II. Also, again, we see this image of a woman in power having to use sort of back channels and probably gossip and seduction and things like that. But Ptolemy dismisses his current wife, Arsinoe I. It's unclear if she had already fallen out of favor, but then he takes Arsinoe II as his wife, which was a big deal. Even marrying a half-sibling was risky for the Greeks in a PR stance, but marrying a full sibling was unheard of, and it was quite an issue with the Greeks for a long time. Let's see. There is a comparison between Zeus and Hera, which also helps because, as some of you may know, the Egyptians saw their rulers as living gods. And so for the Ptolemies to compare themselves to Zeus and Hera as a way to justify their consanguineous marriage, it also sort of enhances this idea that they were divine. This is an Egyptian practice, so it was a way to sort of speak to their Egyptian subjects as well, which, as we know, Cleopatra was also very good at, and she was one of the few Ptolemies to actually learn Egyptian, and it seems that her subjects were fairly pleased with her. They followed her loyally. So
We've got about a minute left.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'm coming to the end of it. So then we have the cult. This is one of the most important parts of the Theoia Delphoi, which is Ptolemy II and Arsinoe deify their parents, and then they themselves become living deities, which is sort of the final step. And this is something that we talked about in our discussions in the tutorials about how strange it must have been for Cleopatra, who's been treated as a living divinity her whole life, to sort of deal with the politics of Rome and just not do what it is that she wanted to. This whole idea that she was treated this way was probably extremely bizarre to her. So yeah, I wanted to just also mention one last thing about Arsinoe, and that in a way that she really paved the road for Cleopatra was the decree of Cremonides, where they say it's a decree about a war with the Athenians, and he says, King Ptolemy, following the policies of his ancestors and sister, demonstrates concern for the common freedom of the Greeks. And this is the first time that a woman's political policy is mentioned in any Greek document as sort of having any kind of effect. So you really, there's hints of it, but you never see any solid documentation of it. So that is the first one. It was after, probably a few weeks after she had already died, or 2 years. The dates are really fuzzy at this point, but I want to give one quick plug if I have a minute. Okay. The book Arsinoe of Egypt and Macedon by Elizabeth Donnelly Carney is actually, I find, very readable if anybody's interested in reading more about Arsinoe. So, yes, I think that.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
I hope that was super fast, and I hope that it was somewhat helpful, yeah. Just to get an idea, because she does pave the way for Cleopatra much later.
It's hard to do Hellenistic history quickly.
Yeah.
Kind of why I like it. I grew up being spoon-fed on soap operas, and then I got to learn about Hellenistic history, and now I watch Game of Thrones. So it all kind of works out in the end. But I think this gives a much better sense of how Cleopatra would have been leading and how different this would be from the sort of person Antony would be. And helps us understand a little bit more her perspective from this Macedonian Egyptian side. So to get even more into the perspectives of our historical figures, I am going to bring this back here to Tulane to my lovely students who are really willing and eager volunteers right now to do this. So we have Sarah will be Plutarch and will be questioning first Fulvia, played by Henry. We decided to bend gender. You can come right up here. And then Octavia will be played by Allie, and Cleopatra will be played by Danielle. So guys, you can take it away.
All right, so I'm going to be serving as Plutarch, and we are going to go in a chronological order. And so we are going to start with Fulvia, and I want to know why Antony failed as a leader.
Well, I'd say probably the biggest reason is he never really listened to me enough. I had all of my plans perfectly set up, perfect timing, and then he just went and ambled off across the rest of the Mediterranean, leaving me alone in Italy. Also, to be honest, he was kind of weak-willed, maybe spineless, you might call it. And he just wasn't a very strong-willed man. And what that means is that when people are around him, like Cleopatra, definite corrupting influence on him, anything she said just filled up his head next.
So then my follow-up question is, could you defend your role in Antony's failure as a leader and the ways in which you influenced him?
I mean, I'm just a woman. Maybe if he had been in Italy, if I had a strong Roman husband to keep me in line, then maybe everything wouldn't have fallen apart, but it did because he stayed. Also, you know, I just wanted him back. What can I say? I'm a woman.
Thank you, Fulvia. All right, so now we're gonna have Octavia come up. So Octavia, I would like you to please explain to us why it is that Antony failed as a leader.
Well, you know, he didn't really stick to Roman values. He went off partying and chasing that Eastern lifestyle. And, you know, he's under a lot of pressure. He came out of a bad marriage, and he's had some negative patterns of behavior in his life. You know, he got mixed in with the wrong crowd at a young age. And it's just so important to have a good childhood. He didn't get that.
So could you please defend for us your influence in his failed leadership?
You know, I didn't get enough troops to him. I was just not giving him enough attention. I was so busy taking care of our kids. I didn't see the warning signs that he was headed down this negative path. I didn't do enough for him.
Thank you, Octavia. Cleopatra? So why, in your opinion, did Antony fail as a leader?
I think that he couldn't control his emotions. He was so in love with me, he couldn't see what he was doing, and he was just blinded by his love, and he just couldn't see.
Would you like to defend your influence in his failed leadership, since you had so much influence over him?
Well, I didn't force him to make any decisions. He made all of his own decisions. I was busy trying to run my empire. I had my own decisions to make. I couldn't make decisions for him.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, thank you, thank you to my lovely, totally not forced to do this students at Tulane. Kenny, are there any questions coming up on the Slack channel that you want to add in?
We don't have any questions yet, but we do have some results from the poll.
Oh,
and
good.
It looks at this point that Cleopatra is leading, but and her lead was much bigger, but it's tightening. The race is tightening. Antony, it appears, is making a comeback.
Excellent. I wonder if all of these explanations made Antony seem a little bit more sympathetic all of a sudden.
Maybe.
But I'm not sure about that. So without further ado, again, I'd like to welcome Vicky Gyori to talk to us about a little bit of her Money Talks module, and really talking to us about the iconographic rivalry that we see between Antony and Cleopatra and between Octavia. So, Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we can get her back on the chat. Everything going okay, Norman?
Can you unmute yourself, Vicky?
Hello? Am I on there?
Yes. There you go.
Okay. Okay. First of all, can everyone hear me and see me?
Yes, you're great. You're coming through just fine.
Okay. I'm not quite sure how to set up the PowerPoint on the screen share, but if somebody has it, they could put it up so that people can follow. If not, then I can send it, which I will anyhow, and a transcript of my talk.
Vicky, do you see a button on the left-hand side of your screen it's like a green button? Or do you see it? Do you see a settings button on the top right-hand side of your screen?
No.
There's a button for a screen share.
Okay, yes, hold on.
You see it?
Okay, and then, so if I put up the PowerPoint and then do screen share?
Exactly. You'll just be talking over your PowerPoint.
Okay, let's see if this works. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Not at all. I can't believe we're like thousands of miles apart and bringing everybody together. It's pretty amazing.
No, I'm in the States right now, so I'm not too
Oh, you
far.
are? Okay.
Yeah, in 2 weeks I'll be back in London. Okay, what can you see it now? Can you see the first? Let me know if you can see the first screen.
No, it's not showing up yet.
Maybe I didn't do it correctly. I mean, I pressed, then
Let me see. You shared it with me, and I'll see if I can find it.
No, it's difficult to do with PowerPoint. But without the image,
Can everybody see that?
yeah, it's up now.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, I'll start. So I'm going to give you a short trailer of my coming attraction, which is on coinage about money. And this week's topic on the quest for power between Octavian, Antony, and Cleopatra is a perfect opportunity to showcase significance of numismatic evidence to our understanding of various ancient and modern leaders. In the Roman Republic, the medium of coinage was a means of self-promotion. More importantly, it was a means to outdo your opponent, a way to do one better. In the 4th century BC, when leading Roman figures began to be depicted on coinage, Marius, Pompey the Great, and Julius Caesar, coin types led to various achievements and voiced offices held of the respective leading figures they were issued. This is one reason why coins should not be studied in isolation. More often than not, coin types of St. Julius Caesar were to respond to coin types issued by Pompey the Great and vice versa. So it was no different between the coins of Octavian and Antony. After Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, Caesar's memory was used by both Antony and Octavian for legitimizing their own succession in authority. Let's look at a couple of coins issued in 43 BC. In April of 43, Antony issued a coin, figure 1, depicting his portrait on the obverse, and the legend M. Antonius Imperator with the laureate head of Caesar on the reverse, and the legend Caesar Dictator. In the summer of 43 BC, Octavian issued a coin, figure 2, with his portrait on the obverse, and the legend Gaius Caesar Imperator, and an equestrian statue of himself on the reverse with the legend SC, Senatus Consulta. This is the first time a living leading Roman figure is seen on both the obverse and reverse of the same coin. The obverse legend, Gaius Caesar, speaks of itself. Already by 44 BC, Octavian took on the name Caesar for himself, since he then discovered Julius Caesar's will and then named himself Caesar's adoptive son. The equestrian statue was voted to Octavian by the Senate at the beginning of the year, hence SC on the reverse, and so shows Octavian as a champion of the Senate against Antony, who was declared an enemy. The portrayal of Antony and Octavia on Octavianic coins, and vice versa, which on the face of it advertises their unity, in fact reveals deliberate signs of rivalry in the omission of religious symbols and titles. For instance, in Octavianic coin, figure 3, dated to late 43 BC, bears an obverse portrait of Octavian with the legend Gaius Caesar, Imperator Triumvir Pontifex Augur, and a reverse portrait of Antony with the legend M. Antonius, Imperator Triumvir Augur. Octavian's superiority is subtly implied by the inclusion of both his priestly titles. Antony contemporaneously minted 2 coin types. On the first, figure 4, the obverse portrays Antony with the legend M. Antonius Triumvir and Elitus, while the reverse shows Octavian with the legend Gaius Caesar Triumvir without the litus. On the second, figure 5, the obverse is the same as the preceding, while the reverse depicts Lepidus with the legend M. Lepidus Triumvir and his priestly symbols. So Antony is showing Octavian without his priestly symbol and Lepidus with. So that's a big difference. By the late 40s BC, Sextus Pompey already assimilated his father with Janus and Neptune on coins, despite the fact that he was never formally made a god by the Senate. Prompted by Sextus Pompey's initiative, Octavian began to advertise his association to Divus Julius after Julius Caesar's official deification by the Senate on January 1st, 42 BC. Divi Filius was a title that neither Sextus Pompey nor Antony could legitimately employ, and so strengthened Octavian's position as the rightful heir of Julius Caesar. The legend Divi Iuli F was seen on Octavianic coins as early as 40 BC, as seen on figure 6. Antony associated himself with Sol, Poseidon, and Dionysus, figures 7 to 10 respectively. Notice that on figure 8, minted in the East, Octavia takes on the role of Amphitrite. Let us look at figures 9, 10, and 11, all minted in Ephesus, in more detail. The imagery on the Octavianic coin, figure 11, dated to 28 BC, is directly influenced by the Antonian coins, figures 9 and 10, both dated to 39 BC. On the obverses of figures 9 and 10, Antony wears an ivy wreath, while Octavian wears a laurel one, as seen on the obverse of figure 11. On the reverse of figure 11, the figure of Dionysus holding a Tirsus is replaced by Apollo holding a caduceus. The System Mystica is moved to the side, and the snakes are eliminated, while an ivy wreath that encompasses the whole of one of the obverses of the Antonian, or one of the Antonian coins, a laurel wreath encompasses the whole of the reverse of the Octavianic coin. The obverse legend on the Octavianic obverse reads Libertatis PR Vindex, champion of the liberty of the Roman people, and the legend on the reverse reads Pax. Both of these legends refer to Octavian's triumph over Rome's enemies, Antony and Cleopatra. The legends also refer to the so-called first settlement of 27 BC, a topic we will investigate further in my module. The reverse legends, Asia Recapta, so Asia recaptured, and Aegypto Capta, Egypt captured, and coins from 29 to 28 BC, so figures 12 and 13, respectively, recall the Armenia Divicta, Armenia having been conquered, legend on an Antonian coin of 32 BC, which is figure 14. In the same way that Antony employed the tiara as a symbol of Armenia, the crocodile can be viewed as a symbol of Egypt. Now, onto women on Hellenistic and Roman coinage, particularly Cleopatra. I will begin with Fulvia and Octavia and then discuss Cleopatra. The introduction of living women into the typological inventory of Roman coins followed the Hellenistic tradition of portraying Hellenistic queens. A town in Phrygia changed its name to Fulvia and minted an obverse coin type in 41 to 40 BC, depicting Fulvia as a winged victory, figure 15a. She is also seen as victory on an Antonian coin type minted from 43 to 41 BC in Lugdunum, figure 15b. This is the first time that a living Roman woman was portrayed on a coin. It should be noted that the first numismatic portrait of a living woman on any coin was that of Arsinoe II. A coin type dated to circa 289 to 280 BC, minted at Ephesus for Lysimachus, depicts the obverse portrait of a veiled Arsinoe, figure 16. Octavia is then depicted on numerous Antonian coins. She appears on an Antonian coin as early as 40 BC, which is figure 17, and on Antonian coins from 39 BC, as we've seen on figures 9 and 10, even as a Jugate portrait on figure 10, on the obverse, and 38 BC, as we've seen on figure 8, facing Antony. Another coin from the same series as figure 8 depicts Jugate heads of Antony and Octavian facing Octavia on the obverse, figure 18. What is important to mention is that neither Fulvia nor Octavia are ever named or even referred to on coins. Later, even Livia's first portrayal on mainstream coinage, Roman coinage, figure 19, which does not appear until AD 13 to 14, does not bear her name or refer to her. The legend Pontiff Maxim on reverse figure 19 refers to Augustus's role as Pontifex Maximus, which he acquired in 12 BC. Only when Augustus died in AD 14, Livia was officially adopted into the Julian family in accordance with Augustus's will and was given the name Julia Augusta. And then her title of Augusta appears on Roman mainstream coins for the first time in Rome, dated to AD 21 to 22, which read SPQR Julia Augusta, figure 20. Although she is identified on a provincial coin from Pergamon, dated to circa 10 to 2 BC, figure 21. It should be noted that Octavian's first wife, Scribonia, does not appear on coins. Augustus's daughter, Julia, does, however, though she is not identified. On a coin minted in 13 Rome, she is seen in between Augustus and Agrippa, her husband, figure 22. Cleopatra, on the other hand, not only was identified on coinage, but was also minted in her own right. Coins were minted for Cleopatra in more than a dozen sites, mainly in the Levant, and her most common identification is Queen Cleopatra. Her Alexandrian coins depict her obverse portrait and a Ptolemaic eagle on the reverse, such as a coin from 40 BC, figure 23. As early as just after Caesarion's birth in 47 BC, bronze coins minted on Cyprus, figure 24, depicted Cleopatra wearing a crown known as a Stephane in the manner of Aphrodite Isis, holding an infant son, Caesarion, in the manner of Aphrodite and Eros, and Isis and Horus. Behind Cleopatra is a scepter, a symbol of authority, and on the reverse is a double cornucopia, symbol of the Ptolemies, as can be seen on coins, for instance, of Arsinoe II, figure 25. The obverse legend reads Cleopatra, going back to figure 24. Other artistic examples of Cleopatra and the Caesarion include a famous relief of mother and son at the Temple of Dendera, figure 26. Many of Cleopatra's coins are joint issues with Antony, though this does not mean that it was a joint rule. For instance, on coins minted circa 34 to 33 BC in one of the Phoenician cities, figure 27, most likely in reference to the donations of Alexandria, which took place in 34, when Antony gave Cleopatra and her children rulership of the East, that is the Ptolemaic and Seleucid empires at their greatest extent. Cleopatra appears on the obverse with the full legend in Greek, Queen Cleopatra, younger goddess, while Antony appears on the reverse with the full legend in Greek, Antony, Imperator for the third time, Triumvir. Most important to note here is that both Cleopatra and Antony are represented and identified in their own right, so in a sense independent of one another. The title, Thea Netoria, younger goddess, is also of particular interest here. It has only been used by Cleopatra Thea, daughter of Ptolemy VI, who became a Seleucid queen twice and a mother of 3 Seleucid kings, as seen on figure 28, a coin minted in 126-125 BC. By emulating Cleopatra Thea, Cleopatra VII asserted herself as a living representative of the Seleucids, as well as reestablishing Seleucid control in Syria. At the same time, in Alexandria, and also in reference to, yeah, I just said,
sorry to interrupt.
1 minute left.
Oh, okay.
I have like one coin and then just a sentence. Yeah. Hold on. Let me see where. Yes. So at the same time, Antony minted a coin in Alexandria, which shows Antony on the obverse with the legend Armenia Divicta and a tiara behind him, and Cleopatra on the reverse with a stem of a prow, and the legend Queen Cleopatra, Queen of Kings, and her son who are kings. The last known obverse portrait of Cleopatra during her lifetime is from Patras in northern Peloponnesus, which was where she and Antony wintered before Actium in 32-31 BC, figure 30. The reverse depicts the headdress of Isis. So I have hoped that this snapshot of the contemporary circulating rival images of Octavian, Antony, and Cleopatra during the 40s and 30s BC, have given some idea of what we will be talking about later in my module. And I would be extremely happy to answer any questions or discuss any of this and much more in greater detail anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That was really great. I was sorry to have to interrupt it. I think for now, the questions will have to be on Slack, and then hopefully if we have a little time at the end, we can come back to you with questions that have come up in the chat.
Anytime. Sorry about the technical difficulties with the PowerPoint.
Okay. That's okay. That's classicists doing this.
Thank you very much.
So now we're going to move this conversation towards thinking about the institutional frameworks in higher education that are shaping the attitude, or the way attitudes towards gender and leadership are conveyed and impressed upon the students we teach. So we're very lucky to have Hobart and William Smith colleges as one of our participating institutions, and Dr. Jim Capriti is leading a host of intrepid freshman students. So three of them, Devin, Lucas, and Morgan, are going to give us the scoop on Hobart and William Smith unique coordinate colleges, a host of intrepid freshman students. So three of them, Devin, Lucas, and Morgan, are going to give us the scoop on Hobart. Okay, so they're going to give us the scoop on Hobart and William Smith's unique coordinate college system and what kinds of leadership opportunities and challenges it presents. So welcome to Devin, Lucas, and Morgan.
Hi, so I'm Devin, and I'm just going to be giving a little bit of background into our colleges here. Hobart was founded in 1822, and William Smith was founded in 1908. And once William Smith came to be, they shared the same facilities, but they were still separate entities at that time. And
excuse me, Devin. Sorry to interrupt you. Could you mute your own feedback there?
I don't know.
Are you playing the video yourself?
Yeah, everything's on.
Can you mute what you're hearing?
Oh, yeah, she'll mute it. I got it. Is that better?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, like I said, once William Smith came to be, they shared the same facilities, but they were still considered separate schools. And it was the Board of Education that made the push for co-educational classes, and they insisted that it would allow students to consider new points of view by having women and men in the classes. And eventually in 1922, they had their first commencement that was together, Hobart and William Smith colleges. And then finally in 1943, the colleges combined for good, so just like they are today. And they were called the Colleges of the Seneca until about 6 years ago. And now it's Hobart and William Smith Colleges, or more commonly HWS. So I'm going to be interviewing Morgan and Lucas. And I'd like to start off by asking, does being at a coordinate college detract from the college experience in terms of social involvement or academic enterprise?
For me, the coordinate system has not detracted at all for colleges. We all share the same classes in the same dorms. We're in the dorm right now. But people sleep in the same floor tonight?
For me, I'd say the same thing. On a day-to-day basis, you wouldn't be able to tell. If you walk around the campus, you wouldn't know. I'd say the only thing that you would know is that when you do graduate, like I will be getting a William Smith diploma while he gets a Hobart diploma. And the only thing for me is that I knew the school as Hobart and William Smith. So when I get a William Smith diploma, will people know that as just William Smith? And kind of know where that stands academically, or will they have never heard of it? And that's probably the only one question I have, but other than that, you wouldn't be able to tell on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so my second question is, does being a part of a coordinate college make you more aware of gender issues?
For me, it did make me more aware of gender issues than before I came here, so it didn't really to me. Like Lauren said, day to day, you don't need to sit at all.
We're so integrated, and the only time you notice the differences is that when I played my sport, I have a William Smith jersey and he has a Hobart jersey. So we are two separate teams.
Yeah, okay. So question 3, did the fact that Hobart and William Smith is a coordinate college affect your college admission decision?
No, for me it was just more like a fun fact. When we were applying, it was just like, oh, cool. They used to be 2 colleges, now 1.
I'd say the same thing. Honestly, when I visited here, I had no idea that they were 2 separate colleges. And I was actually like very intrigued by it because I had no idea. That's pretty much it. I think it's interesting now, like learning about it, because if you just drove around the campus, it's one campus. To learn about how there's one like head dean and then 2 deans for each school was really interesting, and like it all works out really well. But for like, gender issues, like I wouldn't like. I think almost less because we're all on the same floor. Like we're all together so much. I'm almost less think about that than I was at boarding school and there was the boys and the girls, and it's almost less here, even though it's 2 separate schools.
Good point. So my 4th question would be, what are the benefits of attending a coordinate college in your opinion?
The cool thing about Hobart William Smith is that although it's like one college, that we still have our separate traditions. And being part of like the Hobart Statesman, you get a sense of like brotherhood, and for the Herons, you get a sense of sisterhood. So it kind of keeps like the traditional sense like that, which can be very interesting. Something I haven't experienced before.
Yeah, like it would definitely include traditions. Like for me, we just had a William Smith like athletic event, and that's a very traditional thing. They did it every year. We got a William Smith medal, and we'll have a William Smith ring for when we complete everything. And if anything, there's more opportunities. There is a Hobart Senate, and then a William Smith Congress. So then it can be equal opportunities for men and women to try different things. So I definitely think in a way there's more opportunities. It's more of a positive.
Good. So we've only been here 3 weeks, but is there any competition that you see between Hobart College and William Smith College?
I haven't seen any.
Not between the colleges, probably just between like sports teams in general. That's probably the only way you're going to see it. But who knows, there may be something else as the year goes on.
Okay, and my final question for you two is, what is your personal opinion about the coordinate system as a whole?
For me, honestly, I don't think much of it. The only trace I've seen of it is matriculation. Since then, it's been intermingled. For matriculation, it was just boys in one room and just girls in one room. So I think that's the only time we've actually been separated. I don't think really much about it just because it's around, but it's not the focus of college. Again, it's just a fun fact. Yeah, sure.
I feel the same way. It's more of something that's kind of interesting. I didn't really think about it much at all before I came here, and
now that I'm here, I see the benefits of it. I can see how like there are more opportunities like for me, and like there's opportunities for him. There are opportunities in both ways that I really like that about it, and I feel like it is a positive for the school.
So that's all for us, for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I would be really interested to know in 4 years if thinking about the way the college is set up has made you pay attention to differences, and as you talk to your friends back at Thanksgiving when you go home about their colleges and how they're set up. I'd be really interested to see what you're noticing that they don't have, or that what you're missing. But we are running very short on time, so all I want to do now is throw it to Kenny to have him let us know how the Antony versus Cleopatra poll is doing, and to give us a little quick teaser of the Socrates Last Stand module.
Okay, all right. Well, we have Cleopatra has stretched out her lead a little bit since I last reported. She's up to 63% over 38%. There were some interesting questions and some interplay in the chat room today about the way that the image of Octavia as opposed to Fulvia and Cleopatra, and also raising the questions about how they might have viewed each other and what they may have thought about that. And obviously we're a little bit constrained by the sources that we have, which are obviously from the Roman perspective and maybe don't take into consideration quite as much of what we would like to know or see as far as Cleopatra is concerned. Anyway, about next week and Socrates' Last Stand, I am about hearing the students' impressions about working through it. Just to give you a little preview of it, it looks at Plato's Apology. This is Socrates, or Plato's version of Socrates' defense at his trial in 399 BC. But I'm inviting you and to look at this speech after you have met Socrates in the context of Plato's Symposium. And it's my hope that this will offer a very different view, very different reading of the Apology than you might have experienced before in some other context where it's often paired with Euthyphro or Crito or the Phaedo, as opposed to paired with the Symposium. So it is broadly construed, going to look at the differences between what we call a direct leader, that is someone that engages or interacts with someone directly in a face-to-face situation, and an indirect leader who exerts an influence through writings or through products of their lifetime. And of course, Socrates didn't leave any writing behind, but Plato served as one of the great all-time propagandists and promoters of anyone. So it'll be interesting to see how you respond to it. And one final sort of teaser, boxing is going to be a motif. So thanks, Mallory.
Well, thank you so much, Kenny. We're all looking forward to it, and I've looked ahead at that boxing motif, and I'm very excited about it. So we will see you and everyone else back here next week. Thanks for tuning in.